Hi, welcome back to the channel for another video. This time it's a test drive on a SAAB 900 Turbo, but not only a normal turbo, it's a convertible, this one. So I'll give you a walk around. So this one's quite an early one, it's a 1987 model. They came out in 86 and ran all the way through to 1994. They only made 48,888 of these that were sold worldwide, and they're all made in the Finland factory run by Valmet, who did various projects for other car companies and other other businesses. One of them was making SAABs, so all the convertibles made in Finland are the classics and of the new generation 900s. Look inside it. So this one's done 174,000 miles, which is about average mileage for one of these. It's in very good condition. The hood's in fantastic condition. Leather seats. It's Scottish leather they use on these, so it's very supple and it does last very well. There's a bit of wear on the bolster, but no rips or anything like that. It just needs retreating and it'll be fine. On the convertibles, on the early ones only, on the 900 Classics, the only ones that got the leather door tops with the convertibles, it's real leather as well. On the later ones, it ran down there and to the edges, and it's the Carlsons also had that. But as I'm aware of, only the convertible and the Carlson models and maybe the Ruby models very last year the production had those. So the 900 ran from 1979 up into 94, with the last ones being convertibles, as I'm aware. Very popular in the USA, obviously because of the weather and everything, and SAAB had a pretty good reputation in the US. Good alternative to a Mercedes or a BMW convertible. So they're quite nicely equipped. It's a proper four-seater. Just hinge this seat forward. So in the back you've got leather seats again also. In the early ones this has lap belts, and the later ones they had a full 3-point belt on each side. Little eyeball lights as well. The speakers behind these grills as well. 6.5 inch I believe they are. Speakers in the dashboard. And they're a good all-weather convertible, all seasons, because they're quite well insulated. The hoods never leak on these, as I'm aware of, like around the top of the windscreens or anything like that. The only time they do tend to leak is if somebody's had the roof recovered and they don't seal the backing properly, like on this one, and it can leak in the back. But it doesn't really get into the boot, it just sits in the storage area behind the driver's seat, behind the passenger seat. This one is an S model, so it has the skirt kit on it, which runs the underside of the vehicle. Different front skirts, backs are unique as well. It's the S model. This one has the dealer option mini lights on it, which are made by Ronal on these, which are 5.5 by 15s, and this has the early stub pattern of 4x114.3, and the later ones are 4x108s. And something unique to the older ones was that the handbrake is actually operational on the front calipers on this model, like on the SAAB 99 as well, which is the predecessor to the 900. They did do earlier mini lights as a dealer option, and they actually had Carroll Shelby written on them, because Carroll Shelby was commissioned to design the mini lights for the earlier 900s in the mid to late 70s, and on the earlier 900s up until about 81 I think, and then they went to purely Ronal type like this one with plastic centre caps, and the Carroll Shelby ones had a stainless steel centre cap that fitted from behind through the wheel. Right, so we'll have a look under the engine bay. As with all classic 900s and 99s, the bonnet hinges forwards rather than tilting back like most conventional cars. This one being a convertible, it does have some unique features. I'll just turn the engine off so you can hear me properly. The key is located down between the seats. as in most Saabs, and you have to lock it in park to remove the key. Security feature. Right, shut that door. So the mirrors are 9000 type, which are adapted to fit the 900 doors, and the windscreen has a steeper rake than the standard 900s further up like that, and they're a bonded screen in these, so they're not held in just a rubber seal, they're actually bonded for structural integrity, because this post here isn't just a windscreen support, it's actually a rollover protection as well. Even though there's no centre hoop on it, this thing here does help with rollover protection, and the beams, as you can see there, they run right down until they meet the actual wings on the vehicle, whereas on the standard 900s the end about there. So that's one unique feature of the convertible. They also have extra bracing here with this small plate, which doesn't look like much. Within the door sills they're of a different design, much thicker than the standard ones, stand taller. And under the back seat, so I'm not going to pull it up, but there's like big steel plates which help keep the structural rigidity more uniform, obviously because there's no roof on it. And you can see that that's an actual that's a rollover protection bar that's coming, follows its way up into the windscreen post. Excuse me. Right, so the convertible isn't just a two-door 900 with the roof chopped off. Each one is built from scratch as a convertible. So each panel isn't just simply like a quarter panel that's been chopped down. They are built for the convertibles, even though they look like a normal two-door, they're not. Some other features include repositioning of this vacuum tank here, which controls the heating, ventilation and air conditioning system. And in the later models it is relocated to the boot, because it's at a bit of an awkward angle there. So they relocated it to the boot because of the extra length of the rollover protection. There was no space to position this as it was in the standard hardtops. So the engine is a B202. In this one it's mated to a Borg-Warner 3-speed T37 gearbox. So they would normally be 175 horsepower with a manual gearbox. With the automatics they detune to 165, which is just 10 horsepower less, but still plenty quick enough. They are quite short geared, obviously because they're only a 3-speed, and the gearbox does date back to the like early 70s, so it is quite an old unit, because Saab really didn't have the facilities to develop a new gearbox due to budget restraints and other factors. You have here, that is the automatic performance control APC switch, which is a Saab pioneered item which controls the boost depending on what type of fuel it's been run at and what conditions the vehicle is in. So it alters the boost, it reduces turbo lag, and it's something which is used on virtually every car today that is turbocharged. So the manifold runs from there straight to the Garrett turbo on this, where the later ones used a Mitsubishi unit. This one is just oil cooled because it's a very early one. The later ones were water cooled as well. There's your washer bottle. We got the best fuse box out of any car ever made. They're completely watertight, and each fuse is labelled very clearly there. Absolutely fantastic design, so they're not hidden away underneath panels and stuff like that. Get rid of this spare ignition line. This car is a work in progress, so there are one or two bits which need fixing to it, such as the driver's door trim where the window is. It just gets run in and out of the workshop every day until the owner who owns this garage, he's going to get onto it and just finish off a couple of bits and pieces on it before it's ready for sale. So it has had a fully rebuilt engine. It does run pretty well if it's driven daily. The bodywork is immaculate on it. It's had the wheels refurbished, brakes are good, all body kit's been done. It's actually got a gloss finish on this, which I'm not too keen on because I prefer the satin finish like I have on my own. But it's not far from original, it's pretty standard. So we'll have a quick look and see how this roof mechanism works. Okay, so back inside the vehicle, all roofs on the SAAB convertibles, they're all electric, nothing done by hand apart from flicking this lever here, which releases a hook there, and that one there releases that hook there. Fingers crossed this is going to work pretty well. So let's time it, shall we? So we're on 20 seconds now, there we go. The roof is down in 8 seconds. That's got to be one of the quickest electric roofs ever. It's hydraulic powered, so it's electro-hydraulic, so electric motor powers hydraulics, which sits under the rear seat, and they're very reliable on these. I'll put the car with the roof down. They carry the convertible look very well. They've done a good job on this. There were 2 prototypes of the convertible. The first one released in the early 80s by ASC, American Sunroof Company, are the people who also actually made the mechanism for this, as they do for many American cars. And if you look back at some American vehicles from the 60s and 70s, you can see the resemblance with the shape of the rear window, and the line which goes over the back of the hood is very similar to the Saab's. So they did that prototype, and there's a company called Lynx which did another prototype based on the 3-door 900, and the one for the 2-door was chosen, and that was production started in I think 84, and then the first model was released in 86. So we'll get on to doing the test drive in a moment. Okay, here we go. It does feel weird driving an auto turbo one of these. There's 60, so it's not slow really, it's pretty quick, considering it's like, what, 36 years old this year. So I've just had to turn the heater down because the heaters in these are absolutely immense. This thing here on the right, that weird hissing noise, controls the distribution for all the vents and on the floor heating as well. That is actually a fresh air vent which takes air in straight from the bonnet vent directly to there, so it doesn't pass through anything, which you don't see much on cars nowadays, if at all. You used to have it on old Hondas and Rovers, as I'm aware, but it's great in summer, especially if you've no aircon on it. It does bring through fresh cold air. So gentle touch of the throttle, and as with all Saab engines, loads of torque. So this is a B202 engine, the turbo version. The later ones had the fuel injected 16 valves. They didn't do an 8-valve convertible, they're all 16 valves. So the fuel injected ones were 128 horsepower. They did a 138 horsepower 2.1 injection, the B212, but that was only available on the continent, as I'm aware. We never saw it for sale in the UK. The suspension on these, as with all 900 classics, is double wishbone on the front with the coil spring acting on the upper control arm. Transaxle engine sitting on the top of the gearbox, separate sump for the oil, the gearbox and the engine, equal length drive shafts, so you don't really get torque steer. Steering feedback's fantastic, predictable handling characteristics with a tendency to understeer slightly, which is for safety, especially because they're built for Scandinavia. This stops the back end stepping out more readily, so it's like a safety feature, but you can adjust the suspension, the camber on the front upper arms by adjusting the shims, so you can get different handling characteristics depending on which way you set the vehicle up, because they do make good track cars. A stripped out 2-door version of one of these, absolutely fantastic, because they reduce the weight in them, very stiff, very light, and obviously get a very torquey engine, so they do make good track cars if one's set up properly. What I'm going to say about the interior is heated seats in the front as standard. The left one automatically switches on via a little thermistor which sits in the base of the seats. I think it's goes below 14 degrees Celsius, it'll trip in and put the heating on that seat. So the driver's seat on this one because it's an earlier one, is manually controlled on the switch on the right with 3 stages like you get on a SAAB 9000, so that's pretty good, and it actually works in this one. I've got it turned on and it is quite warm, which is fantastic after so many years. This one hasn't got air conditioning. It was an option, a very expensive one at the time. As I'm aware, the ones with the older brakes on like this didn't have anti-lock brake option, but 88 onwards, when they switched to the later brakes and the handbrake on the rear, they did come with ABS. So I'm just going gentle on there because, as you see, there's some mud on the road actually from tractor, so I'm going to take it easy. Get in the 60 zone, I'm going to push the throttle, get kicked down. Fast enough for me down here, especially as this car hasn't been running a while. With regards to scuttle shake, which is the tendency of the car twisting and shaking as you go over the bumps with most convertibles, I don't think these are too bad. They're certainly way better than the subsequent models, the new generation 900 and the old generation 93s, which were absolutely shocking for scuttle shake. These I don't think are too bad. It's not uncomfortable. It is still there, obviously, but I think it's way better managed in the classic 900 than it is in the later SAABs. And the only ones which are probably better than this are the new generation 93, which they've got substantial bracing within and externally on the body shells on those, and they're also very good for not shaking too much. As with all 900s, they're a very, very comfortable vehicle. The visibility is absolutely fantastic. You've got standard safety features such as side impact beams, rollover protection, properly engineered crumple zones. You've got a plastic fuel tank on every single 900, apart from the very early ones for the first 18 months, because they carry that over from the SAAB 99. So you don't end up with rotten fuel tanks and tanks splitting in accidents and stuff like that. Collapsible steering column on these. The dashboard's all padded and soft and everything, like it's all soft touch foam. All the dash is collapsible. You have a knee pad, which I don't know if you can see me touching there, which is almost as effective as a knee airbag in later vehicles, and they didn't have this on the new generation 900 and old generation 93s, which came after this. It's just basically a huge steel section with a very thick layer of expanded foam on it, and from watching videos and stuff like that, when your knees impact that, it just collapses and absorbs any impacts. As with the ignition key, it's between the seats, so in an accident you won't end up slicing your knees up on that. But yeah, ride and handling are absolutely fantastic on these. Anybody who's ever driven one or been a passenger one, you'll know. So at 70, it's at about 3,400 revs, which is on the high side, but that's still not as bad as some vehicles, some modern vehicles, petrol models, which are still around that. But I say, this has the power to pull through at any speed. You can drop it a gear if you wanted to, manually with a gear lever. Doing a manual conversion with a gearbox on these are quite a simple task, really. You just need to obviously change the gearbox, fit a master cylinder for the clutch, put the clutch pedal in and gear lever assembly, and it just swaps over. Quite simple, really. I've done a few of them over the years working with SAABs, and they've all been successful. And a manual gearbox, even though the auto's okay, the manual one transforms the car completely. I mean, depending on how you drive it, you know, you're either a comfortable cruiser, or if you have one that's been tuned with a manual gearbox, and they are a bit of a rocket. Compared to most convertible cars from the era, these are leagues ahead, in my opinion. You know, it's still a very usable vehicle today. The only fear is somebody else crashing into it, you know, damaging it, but you know, you'll be relatively safe driving something like this compared to something like a BMW E30, which are way overpriced and absolutely lethal in an accident. I don't know how Mercedes convertibles stack up, but they're probably not as fun to drive as these, because, you know, if you've never experienced a SAAB convertible, they're quite a fun vehicle to drive, as are the other 16 valve turbos. As a child, I travelled to Devon in one of these, and it was pretty comfortable. My dad managed to squeeze 137 out of his. His was an automatic as well. You'd actually up the boost a bit on his as well, but it wasn't that older vehicle at the time. It had only done about 38,000 miles, so it's not the type, you know, it was that young, you didn't want to rip it out and put a manual box in. That was a red one, bright red with a tan leather interior, and that's as fast as it would go because the gearing on the gearbox, which is fast enough really in a convertible. Just hitting a bit of heavy traffic today in this test drive. You do get a little bit more wind noise in the convertibles than the standard models, but with regards to comfort and heats and stuff like that, there really is not much difference between this and a hardtop version. So the only reason you may see the camera shaking around a bit is because it's on the tripod and the tripod's extended up. It's not because the car's wobbling all over the place. It is very comfortable. Don't know what's going on here. Just looking a bit of a traffic jam all the way back to the garage. Yeah, standard features: side impact beams, central locking, 4 electric windows, tinted glass, collapsible column. You got headlamp wipers, optional aircon, disc brakes all around. Obviously, it's a Saab. You're not going to have anything else but disc brakes. So that concludes the test drive on this one, so I'll just end the drive here and do a bit of a walk around, and that'll do for that. It's probably the longest drive it's been on in a while. We do take it out every few days, we'll try to keep it running nicely, because it doesn't like to be running in and out the workshop every day because it's always on cold start and it overfuels and stuff, obviously, and the plugs never get a chance to clean up, but sounds quite sweet actually. Tick overs are touch high on it because again it's all warmed up properly now and everything, so that I need adjusting. It runs a Bosch fuel injection management system on this one. The later ones use the Lucas system. There is some debate as to which one's best, but they're both pretty good. This one's got an intercooler on it because it's a full-blown turbo. The light pressure turbo ones didn't have an intercooler. The tanks there. Everything's quite accessible on these to work on. Like alternator is only there. Water pump I did on my own. It took me literally about 15 minutes to change a water pump on it, and you don't have to bleed the system itself bleeding. Yeah, all round fantastic vehicle. So I shall conclude it. Okay, thank you very much for all for watching. I hope to see you next time.